Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Frontline Hiring Meets AI, Turning Urgency into Results. My name is Paige, your webinar host for today and part of the iCIMS marketing team. And before we get started, we just have a few need-to-knows to go through. So when we get started with the discussion, if you have any questions, you can add them to the Q&A or chat throughout the session, and we'll answer as many of them as we can. And please also put any comments or thoughts in the chat throughout the session. We always love to see a lot of discussion throughout. And next, just letting you know that the session will be recorded and the recording will be sent out to you within a few days via email. And then lastly, there will be a quick survey that pops up on your screen at the end of the session. So please take a minute to fill it out so we can continue to make these sessions better for everyone. So now for the main event, I want to welcome our speakers, Trent, Lisa, and Vera. Thanks so much for being here today. And if you want to connect with our speakers, feel free to use the QR codes on your that are on the screen to connect with them on LinkedIn. So I'll pass it over to you, Trent, to get us started with the introductions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paige, and welcome everyone to the call. Super excited to dig into this very hot topic. And I have got the leading ladies of frontline hiring and AI and all kinds of good stuff. Lisa is our SVP of AI platform and data here at iCIMS. And Vera is the co-founder of Apply, now an iCIMS company. So welcome, ladies, to the board.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Excited to be
Awesome.
part of the team.
Yeah, me too. So just for the audience, we did a frontline hiring report. It's the 2025 frontline hiring report, and it was packed with a lot of data that I thought that we could unpack some of the stats today and give you some actionable strategies on how you can conquer frontline hiring. After 20 something years in talent and HR, I loved frontline hiring, but I also had a low key hate for it. And a lot of the data actually proves why that gave me such frustration. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to break the session into two different points. So we're going to look at what's going on in the viewpoint of the hiring manager, and then we'll shift gears, and then we will look at what's going on in the viewpoint of the candidate, and then we'll round it out because I know that there's a lot of interest in the recent acquisition of Apply, which is definitely going to come up toward the end. So I'll let both of the ladies give you a little sneak peek, but the real sneak peek is going to happen in our iCIMS next, which is in November. So with that, why don't we go ahead and jump into the very first stat. All right. So some of the biggest drop-off points, according to the managers, they think that 32% of the candidate drop-off happens at the interview stage, followed by 20% at scheduling and 18% at onboarding. And only 14% actually see something wrong with the application process, which I found kind of interesting, but it says a lot. So in both of your minds, what are some of the root causes here, and what are we experimenting with to help turn more interviews into hires, starting with the app side? So Lisa, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I think I want to address these stats, and then talk a little bit about the hiring manager side. But in terms of, why we might be seeing this kind of response from the survey, I think there is a perception that that things are falling off in some of these stages, but really it's the root cause of this is likely the fact that the candidate experience is just not connected. It's
Mhm.
not a seamless end-to-end process that the candidate can move through rapidly, which I think Vera will talk a little bit about speed and how the importance of speed. But it's disconnected in many cases today, and that creates a lot of drop off, whether it's in the application process or in some of these other areas as we go through. The hiring manager aspect of this is, from our perspective, is the hiring manager also has oftentimes a disconnected experience. And so one of the things we really want to focus on as we continue to enable more frontline hiring, high volume hiring capabilities for our customers is ensuring that we give that hiring manager the tools, we meet them where they are, in terms of what they're, where they physically are, where they are virtually, so that they can execute the process and sort of keep up with what the candidates are experiencing on their side of the fence. Vera, what do you think?
Well,
Yeah.
actually, Vera,
Oh,
before
wait, sorry.
you, yeah, before you hop in, let's do a quick poll because I'd like to get a temperature check from the audience on where are you seeing the biggest drop-off point from frontline hiring candidates during the process. I want to see if this data lines up. And Vera, this probably, I know you've got a lot of fantastic stories. This will probably help you figure out which one of those we want to try to get in.
Yeah, it looks like during the interview stage is trending, scheduling as well. Less on onboarding and a little bit on the incomplete applications. So talking really about the drop-off rate. I mean, if you think about the entire process, end to end, from application to hire, 98% of that time is spent waiting. Right? The
Mhm.
recruiters and the hiring managers waiting for the candidates to apply, the candidates waiting on the recruiters and the hiring managers to get back to them. And when we're talking about frontline hiring, where people are getting jobs on the same day or the next day, that's a lot of waiting. So if you think about it, let's say, candidate applies on Friday through a job board. Best case, they're getting a call back maybe on Monday if the recruiter had enough time to get back to them. Maybe on Tuesday, maybe on Wednesday, maybe never. We actually did some mystery shopping studies with our clients where we called candidates that were applying through job boards, and only 15% of them got a call back. And
Whoa.
and and after 7 days on average. Right? But that's not even the end of the process. That is the recruiter interview. We haven't even
Right.
gotten to the hiring manager, right? Because then another interview needs to get scheduled, and that probably takes another week of work to do. So it's not any surprise that by the time the candidate is ready to be interviewed by the hiring manager gets a lot of drop off because they already have another job, right? Because it's
Mm,
so that's how they're perceiving it, because the time spent in the process was way too long. Now that's kind of the vicious circle side of the story. On the virtuous circle side of the story, imagine an experience where the second that you apply, maybe it's 2 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday or a Sunday because you're getting off the night shift, and in that instant, you're getting interviewed. You already
mm,
know what is the location closest to where you live. You already know that you qualify in terms of, how much you want to make, what is your prior experience, what are your skills. And on Monday morning, you have an interview already set up with a hiring manager, right? Because there's no
mhm.
need to have another round of pre-filters, phone calls, etc. So maybe if you're walking around on Sunday and you're seeing some walk-in opportunities, maybe you think twice because, hey, I know I qualified for this job and I should give it a chance and go for that hiring manager interview on Monday morning and make the best decision for myself.
And also too, like, because I know the three of us have talked a lot, we've geeked out on the whole technology and trying to solve this problem. But one thing that I love that both of you have talked about, and maybe you can expand, is being able to address that for the hiring manager. You're actually giving them the reins to figure out, okay, when am I free? What's the best time? Do I want it to do a Zoom? Like, can both of you just kind of unpack that? I don't want to share all of it that we've talked about, but there's some really good stuff in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're a hiring manager, I mean, also the time to actually create a requisition is valuable for you, because
Hmm.
if your, line cook has left or
Right.
your retail salesperson is not there, you need those hands tomorrow. You don't have
Hmm.
time to go and talk to HR to open the requisition, etc. And what we're giving through a much better consumer grade hiring manager experience is technology to be able to, in 3 or 4 clicks, to open that job opportunity and be able to already start sourcing candidates, set up your calendar availability where the candidates are already setting up interviews in your downtimes, right? Because
Hmm.
when you're available, when you're overloaded with customers or where you're overloaded with work, and the candidates select the time that works best for them. That also works for you as a hiring manager.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Lisa, I know you've been uh, pleasantly I guess obsessed is a good word in this with the kind of the hiring manager experience. And I love
Yeah.
what you said that they are often the persona that we forget about the most.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we do, and listen, having been a hiring manager for many years, it can be a very frustrating experience. And while I've never personally been hiring for Frontline, I've experienced many of the steps that the frontline manager has to experience. And I think, one of the things that's interesting, just kind of riffing off of what Vera said, is I think for the hiring manager, and this is fundamentally one of our sort of principles in our product development roadmap right now, which is, and I want to throw the word AI in. I can't believe we haven't actually used AI yet,
I
and
know that's
we're
surprising,
13
especially for the
minutes
three
into
of
this.
us.
Yeah, I know we're in 13 minutes into this, and we haven't actually said the word AI yet, but it's not really a word, but anyway, we've been looking at this persona, this hiring manager persona. And we've also been looking at it from the standpoint of where we introduce automation and where we don't. And it's this conversation around what things need to be human led and must be human led, and what things can be automated. But the other dynamic of this is it does often vary from customer to customer. And so it's interesting because, our chief product officer was doing a round of voice of the customer interviews, and he's talking to one customer who's like, yeah, we have this process, and we want our hiring managers to execute these 5 steps to open a requisition. And then the next customer said, you know what, the minute the termination notice hits our system for these frontline roles, we want the requisition automatically opened for the next to
Mhm.
backfill that job, and we want the candidate flow just immediately start. So I think one of the things we look at from an iCIMS point of view is we want to meet our customers where they are. We want to offer capabilities to solve for both of those scenarios. And so, but at the end of the day, it's ensuring that we've got all the tools in place for the hiring manager. So that's just
I
one
love that.
example.
Yeah, and I think you kind of are leading us into that next struggle point for a lot of hiring managers, which is quality, at the top
Yeah.
of the hurdle. But our data actually shows there's a process gap in the funnel. So it isn't struggling with volume, but more about struggling with getting the right candidates through, like fast tracking that top talent from, like Vera was saying earlier, from apply to, hey, I'm in front of the manager in 24, 48 hours. So what strategies have you two seen work to help improve that quality, reaching the hiring manager quicker?
Barry, you
So
want
I
to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I think this is where the AI really comes into play, because before we're talking about a lot of process automation, maybe some decision trees, etc. However, the AI really comes into play to improve quality, because let's face it, what is the number one problem in frontline hiring? It's turnover, right?
Mhm.
It's the competition for frontline talent, it's turnover. And if you are doing this process digitally, you are actually sitting on a gold mine of data, because you're recruiting for hundreds or thousands of the same positions with the same roles, with the same responsibilities, and you have the opportunity to see what actually correlates with early turnover or with performance on the job. So that's what we've been doing with machine learning, is figuring out what are the factors that are responsible for predicting early turnover, for predicting sales. And a lot of them is not what people often say is the heuristics that we as
Mhm.
humans imperfectly, start taking shortcuts and assuming. A lot of it has to do with soft skills,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? Because when you're talking about frontline roles, you're talking about resilience, you're talking about teamwork, you're talking about communication. Sure, some hard skills as well, mental math, maybe some Excel roles involved, maybe some languages, right, that you need to speak.
Mhm.
But this is where you can actually put data behind and use AI to actually prevent biases from happening, to have and to surface candidates that probably with some fast heuristics would have been discarded from the process beforehand.
Yeah.
I love that.
Can I tag into that trend if you don't mind?
Absolutely. I was waiting for you to.
Oh, good, because Vera used my favorite four-letter word, which is data. And so one of the things that we're really excited about with the acquisition of Apply and the coming together of that technology and really that business process work that the Apply team, Vera and her team have done over the last number of years is, one of the great things is at iCIMS, we sit on a lot of data that we have available to help us really help our customers get to that right level of candidate, by introducing more data to some of those algorithmic models that are available to help assess the soft skills, as well as the hard skills. And while our customers use many different types of assessment tools, we do have some underlying capabilities with this coming together with Apply that we're excited to make available for our frontline customers. So more to come on that, but I think that we're going to be doing is taking larger swaths of data to build on that, and really maybe even introducing some refinement around different types of skills, different types of roles in different industries that I think we have the opportunity to do by bringing these capabilities and the data together. So
Yeah, and speaking to the recruiters, the TA leaders, and the CHROs, one of the things that just really kind of jumps out about that is a lot of times you're like, whenever you're doing the intake, what does the perfect candidate look like? And a lot of times the managers, they just go, it looks like Carol, but they can't describe what Carol does. What are those attributes that she has? The exciting part about the future is that we'll actually be able to have data so you can repeat that success. And Vera, I'm glad that you called out that if we do it correctly, it actually opens up diversity. It gives people who have the skills, but maybe just really suck at putting a resume together, they have the skills and they can be able to be considered for a role where maybe they were overlooked before. So I love all of that. I do think it's time that let's switch over to the candidate point of view. So we've talked a little bit about the hiring manager. Now I want to get into what's going on with the candidates. So the very first one is that 60% of frontline workers have started but not finished an application, with half of them citing that the process was entirely too long. So how can organizations redesign and streamline that application, so that top of the funnel, so that way more candidates get through that first stage? And what have we learned through Apply's approach that might address this far too common problem? So two questions.
So I think we need to disassemble the Frankenstein of disconnected systems through which we put not only the candidate, but also our talent acquisition team, right? Because if you think about
Right.
it, you start in a job board, then you go to a career site, then you go to an applicant tracking system, then you go to some assessments provider, then you go to like an interview scheduler, background checker, document collector, electronic signature. I mean, by the time you're done, you probably have interacted with 5 or 6 different platforms, each of
Mhm.
which there's a friction and a drop-off point from switching. The recruiters can't find you and where you got stuck, right? So the
Mhm.
idea is to make this one seamless conversation where everything can be done in a conversational interface, and the entire process from start to finish can happen in the same exact place. So the candidate never needs to question where they need to go, what is the next step, and you're constantly getting instant feedback on where you are in the process.
Yeah, and Alejandro, you called it out very accurately, saying that being able to really kind of focus on how do you make things easier on the front end. There is just so much stuff that you bury and you add on to that application, and you have to think that's the candidate's first experience. Don't you want that? You don't want their first experience to go, wow, this is complicated to even get considered for a role. What does the organization look like behind the curtain? So, just kind of keep that in mind as you're looking to streamline part of those processes. Lisa, do you have any thoughts on this one?
well, I'm watching the chat and there's some really interesting comments coming across there. So a couple of things. It was, Alejandro said we recently shortened the application and made it easier to get into our portal. because I guess the sense is too much process is a deterrent for our frontline applicants. And I think it's too much process, but if the process has to happen because you need that information, then you've got to create a streamlined experience for the candidate so that they will complete it, right? So there is a bit of a trade-off, but I love the idea of shortening the application to simplify things. So simplification is always like a best practice, right? And then some conversation about self-scheduling. And this is really interesting because it's that notion of shifting the responsibility of certain steps in the recruitment process from one persona to the other. It used to be something the recruiter or the hiring manager had to execute on behalf of that candidate. But if there's a way to automate that and put that in the hands of the candidate, where maybe they're trying to, they're looking for a job in a restaurant, and the hiring manager just knows that there's going to be interviews that are scheduled from 2 to 5 in the afternoon or 2 to 4 in the afternoon before the restaurant opens, and the candidate's actually able to schedule that interview. That puts that power in the candidate's hands. They know what's going to happen. It's instantaneous, and the hiring manager just has to be there to execute the interview. So I love those notions of shifting responsibility of certain tasks from one persona to another to keep the process moving.
Well, and also too, so, coming from, most of my career was in a very regulated industry.
Yeah.
So there are things that are outside of your control that you have to collect on the front end. However, maybe how we collect that data. So I know both of you are very passionate and experienced looking at conversational, like changing how we're looking at the application to where it's more of a conversational thing and the application's being filled in on the back end. I am not doing a good job technically, Lisa, so don't give me a grade on that, but I'm trying to set it up to where you can come in and clear the air. So did either one of you want to tackle kind of the conversational experience?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I'd like to question this trade-off that has always existed. Is it speed or is it quality, right? So we want speed. So we're just basically going to say, what's your name and what's your number, which doesn't tell you much about the candidate. And, but that way we get them through the initial part of the process. But that puts a lot of work back on the recruiter to do the filter and to actually do the real interview, or it increases your early turnover. What I'd like to say is, in 2025, with conversational AI, you don't have to choose anymore. The reason why the process was long was because it was clunky and it wasn't friendly, right? So imagine like filling out on your small phone screen a really long form. And if your internet goes out or you're interrupted, that's it. Like you have to start all over because you didn't save, right? That's where the drop off happens, right? But if you're just chatting along and like someone interrupts you or you have to do something else, and then in a casual way, the chatbot reminds you to continue the conversation when it's fun, when it's easy for you to do so, or all you do is you upload your resume and you already have all the information. You don't need to ask for it one more time, right? To fill it out from scratch. So it's long because it's clunky and you have to wait at each part. If it's natural, if it's instantaneous, you can actually just even upload a voice message with your prior experience, right? You don't even have to type. So that's what makes it, you can get a lot of really good information without having the process be lengthy and unfriendly.
So there's some interesting comments. So, the first one, I think Nate actually said that they have two portals, one for Frontline that doesn't require resumes and the one for professionals that does. So that's a great way to at least start doing that. Um, and then Jessica Smith said that Apply Network and short applications are great, which is actually causing a new challenge, which is submitting mass applications that are not reading the requirements, which Jessica, just hold tight. The very next topic that we're going to get into actually gets into skills assessments and things like that, and it can help with some of that volume there. Let's see. Tammy, so in the janitorial, where'd you go? Oh, people are seeing that we're answering questions and we're getting more.
I think
So
there's a lot.
I'm like trying,
Yeah,
as soon as I lock in, yeah.
I'm having a hard time
So
keeping up with that, so maybe we better come to that later, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's keep the questions on the page. Maybe if you could just snag a couple of these comments and then we'll save some time at the end and we can tackle them. So on the issue of candidate quality, if we can go ahead and bring up the screen again, we want to talk about how candidates are approaching selling themselves and showing that they are qualified. So only 17% of frontline workers say that they actually find jobs that they need or that meet their needs. And 69% feel that employers really just don't listen to what the candidates want in the hiring experience. So some additional data from our June workforce report says that many candidates would rather prove their skills in an assessment versus an interview. And I think this is going to get to Jessica's quality. And I know Vera, I was like, she's about to answer the next question inadvertently. So, what kind of technology could be used on the assessment side? And can you tell us what that assessment experience would be like for candidates of the future?
Yeah, so we have various options. It can just be a multiple choice assessment that takes 3 to 5 minutes, very short and very easy to do. It can actually be answering kind of a situational judgment type question of what you would do with an unsatisfied customer, what you would do in a situation of out of stock. Um, so it can be done via video, it can be done via voice, it can be done via chat. So the idea is to take the pressure off, and maybe for client-facing roles, you really do need that those kinds of skills. But maybe for other roles that are not so client-facing, it's much easier to do an assessment than to have to answer those questions in an interview.
Awesome. Lisa?
Yeah. So just a couple of things to tag into that. One is, the good thing about using, a sort of an AI ML driven approach to the assessment is you can really how you can create a dynamic that helps you understand the real characteristics of the individual, whether they're the soft skills or the hard skills. And it's not, I'm sort of repeating some of the things that Vera just said, but it's not, sort of black and white. It's not one thing or another. I think we have, as we've gotten into this integration with Apply, we've been really starting to dig into how we can reinforce that candidate experience through the notion of an early stage assessment and leverage it to help customers better understand the quality of these candidates. The other thing I think that Vera touched on is that the way candidates actually experience that virtual application process is evolving. You talked about the notion of candidates saying they'd rather fill out an assessment than actually go through an interview. Well, an interview can also be a virtual interview. There's a lot of things. Recently was at HR Tech. There was a lot of talk about virtual interviews, and the notion of candidates. That type of scenario taking some of the pressure off of the candidate as they go in that experience, because they're not actually coming into contact with a human being, which is a little disconcerting, I might add, just on a number of levels. But it's the reality of the world we live in, and so I think those are some of the things that, as we go forward, we're exploring. We're starting to test out and try and understand the value that those bring to at the end of the day, ensuring that our customers get the right candidates in the jobs quickly, and that we are also helping them reduce churn. Because in frontline, we're talking about churn rates that are oftentimes 100% or more on an annualized basis. Time is money, speed, and is really important, and so that's an area that is of great importance as we continue to build out these capabilities.
And
And
just
also
to
to the
add,
sanity. Oh, I'm sorry, Vera. But
sorry.
you were talking about the cost and the time, but also the sanity for the three personas involved. The
Yeah.
candidate gets frustrated because they're a wrong fit for the role, so maybe they didn't perform and got fired, or they just self-selected out and said, this is not for me. The hiring manager for going back all the way through this process again. And then, of course, the recruiter going, how many times do I have to fill this role? It's really exciting to hear how technology may be the way that we can finally solve that sanity problem across those three personas. So I'm sorry, Vera, go for it.
Yeah. So I think on that part of sanity, I think there's some things that some filters that just have to be binary, right?
Hmm.
Salary expectations, distance to
Yes.
work, right? Because this is just churn waiting to happen. But what happens if you are a recruiter who is going insane and the hiring manager is putting a lot of pressure on you just to fill the position because they need to deliver the goods and the services, and they end up opening these filters, right? Like, oh, they want to earn more, but I convinced them that, this is an
Oh, yeah.
acceptable salary, right? Oh, they live a little bit far away, but they said it's no problem commuting. And then surprise, surprise, 2 or 3 weeks later, this person
Hmm.
got another job that paid them more and was closer to their home, right? So some filters need to be upfront and binary and just let the candidate self-select out without trying to pull miracles which are not long-term sustainable. But then the other thing is, we continue talking about this ideal profile as if we know what it is, because honestly, sometimes it's a moving target. We have actually proven with data that it can be a moving target. A great story, one of our retailers went through a huge expansion phase. So they were opening one new store every week. So the
Wow.
ideal candidate for that for that time and that phase was actually the cowboy entrepreneur. They just do whatever they need to do to get the store
Hmm.
open and to get it at break even, etc. Like just invent it and see what works. Well, 3 or 4 years later, they've now opened all of their stores. And now the name of the game is operational efficiency. So they are looking for
Hmm.
kind of the Six Sigma black belts who are making sure that the process is followed exactly, because that is what is being incentivized. Same retailer, same company. You could even say, same culture and same values,
Right.
but a different part, a different chapter in the story. So guess what? Initially, all of the process-driven oriented people were churning like crazy because you needed the cowboy entrepreneurs who
Hmm.
like that
Yeah.
uncertainty. And then later on, the cowboy entrepreneurs, this was too structured for them. They were the ones who were churning. So the beauty of having a machine learning algorithm that learns on more data is your profile is evolving, and you can actually see what is predicting the churn and correct towards that.
I love that. And then, Lisa, I know there was a question here about ensuring that
Yeah.
candidate isn't a bot. Did you want to take that one? That was from Jeff. It's either Gallet or Galette.
Yeah, no, I saw that one go across, and I did want to just quickly tag on to that. So, look, it's interesting because we've got a body of work going on right now to really start exploring some of, I don't know, we were using the term fraud. I come out of the financial services industry, so that's a word we used a lot there, and oftentimes in the credit card industry as an example. But we are there. Our customers are telling us that they are seeing what we're referring to as this AI assisted applications, where they're either bot generated or bot enhanced, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity to help customers, whether it's in the front line or in the more heavily skilled areas, to really identify where AI is being utilized and whether it's acceptable or not. I mean, I saw a note yesterday that one of the big tech providers is actually like encouraging people to use bots to submit applications. And so it's happening more and more. And for some customers, it's a problem. And for some, it's not, for a variety of reasons. So I think this is going to be a growing area of focus for us. And as we look to some of the things we can do above and beyond some basic things like geo blocking and other things, this is going to be an area we should talk more about in the future.
Absolutely. This is, I appreciate you tackling that. Fraud, I can tell you between analysts and questions that I get from the audience, it used to be all the time about bias, bias, bias. Now it is fraud,
Yeah,
fraud, fraud.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
the interest has shifted. So, Paige, why don't we bring up the very last stat? Because this one blew my mind. Uh, it's kind of mind-boggling. So, according to the World Economic Forum, we have got 80% of the global workforce is considered frontline workers. And so this demand is going to continue to increase according to projections. So we've been hinting around about Apply and the integration and all of that. I'd like to turn it over to you both. Can you give us a sneak peek of kind of what's in the immediate future? If I'm an iCIMS customer and I've got a lot of frontline hiring that I need to do, what are some of the enhancements and some of the ideas that both of you are playing around with?
Yeah, well, why don't I tackle it by talking a little bit about our integration, and then Vera,
Sure.
you can tag in with some of the places we see this going. But first of all, we're really excited to bring these two companies together. And some of the customers that the Apply team has brought on board are extremely large entities who are some of the biggest hiring companies in the world in terms of frontline. So right now we're going through our initial integration, which is going to give us the ability to connect our iCIMS ATS with the Apply frontline hiring experience for both candidates and hiring managers and recruiters. That will bring that conversational chatbot experience along with the hiring manager workflow to life here in the next few months. So we're super excited about that. As we go into 2026, we will be rolling out more AI capabilities within that solution. And, I think one of the things I just want to make a sidebar comment about AI, because this is sort of central to our AI strategy, which is our customers, a year ago, our customers were talking very differently about AI than they are now. And the acceptance, the adoption of AI is going to continue to increase. However, not everybody is in the same place. And so it's really important that as an organization, we meet our customers where they are. We support what they need and what they want in terms of AI adoption, as well as having other workflow related capabilities that aren't necessarily leveraging AI. So we've got that sort of underpinning a lot of our product development work. As we get into the top of the year, if you're an iCIMS customer, many of you are probably already having conversations with some of our sales folks about what's to come. So we're really excited to have those conversations with you. And as we get into the top of 2026, I think those are going to be accelerating quite rapidly. Vera, anything you want to tag in there?
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to improving kind of three items. One is having a 100% conversational experience for the candidate, where in one conversation they can do everything. As soon as they apply, they can do all of their filters, they can do all of their scheduling, they can do all of their assessments, receive their offer letter, accept it, sign it, etc. Everything in one conversation. So they never have to leave that user interface. And then for the hiring manager, a very light, friendly, consumer grade app where with a few clicks, they tell us what they need. We give them the 3 or 4 candidates, which are already pre-screened with AI to choose from. They say who they want to hire, and the rest of the hiring process is taken care of in an automated way with AI as well. And all of this data flowing back, so that way everything that you have on your iCIMS ATS, all of the reports include your frontline hires, include your corporate hires, and you can get and really drill down into any kind of metric and the time spent in each part of the process. What is causing the drop off rates? What is causing the conversion increase or decrease? So that way you can really become process engineers and optimizers and really understand what are the levers to make the process even better, even more efficient, faster, higher quality, as opposed to doing all of the things that we hate doing
Right.
in a repetitive fashion.
Yeah. And that's the thing that there's still a segment of recruiters who are very almost terrified of AI and what the implications are going to be on their job. I can tell you that if I had to look through my life and go, when would I want to come into recruiting? Now would probably be number two compared to whenever I actually started. It was fun. Because the thing one of the reasons I got out of the recruiting world, kind of that hand-to-hand combat, got into management, was because I loved being with the people. I loved really kind of digging in, but more and more processes were added to where I wasn't spending that time. I think now AI to me, it's funny. It takes machines coming into a human process to allow us to be more human, but that's kind of what's happening. Lisa, I know you mentioned that you had some ideas on this as well.
Yeah, so well, first of all, and we've talked before about the human, where the humans need to be doing the work
Hmm.
versus where they don't need to be doing the work. And so, look, there's no doubt that, and it's interesting, like, would now be the time I would want to become a recruiter? I think so, because first of all, I love technology and I
Hmm.
love the idea of tools that simplify my life so I can focus on the things that are really important, which is about getting the right candidates into the right jobs and working that human side of the recruiting process. There, if we can dramatically improve the process for scheduling interviews and scheduling panel interviews or group interviews or all of that for a recruiter, then I think that's fantastic, because that's 20
Hmm.
minutes of time or whatever it takes to focus on something that's far more important. So I do think now is a really exciting time to be uh, in that space, in the recruiting space, and have the opportunity to use some of these really interesting tools that are coming to life. And so, like I said, from an iCIMS point of view, meeting customers where they are with AI is really important. One other thing that we have, as we've been doing a lot of voice of the customer work around Frontline, and talking to some of our customers who use us for more corporate skilled hiring, less high volume, or even high volume skilled, we're hearing some of the same needs that fit some of the tools we're building and or enabling for Frontline. And so the question then becomes, do we take some of these things and make them available for other types of hiring? And the answer is absolutely. So we're
Hmm.
really excited to try and bridge the gaps between Frontline and skilled corporate or not high volume. And I'm using a lot of buzzword terms there, but it's the spectrum of hiring that our customers go through, because even if you are, if 80% of your hiring is Frontline high volume, you still have a percentage that is not. And so how do we solve that with some of the same tooling? At the end of the day, every customer who uses the Apply Frontline hiring solution that we're bringing to life in iCIMS integration, as along with our ATS that's already there, the data will flow backwards and forwards across those systems. So there's not going to be, going back to Vera's point, that having that visibility to your hiring metrics. That's actually one of the things that's coming out at the top of the year. So we're excited about being able to provide that data that our customers can use to better understand their hiring process and manage it most effectively.
I love that. And also like the knowledge sharing that we're seeing in the chat and people offering to connect with each other to share some
Yeah,
best practices. It's one of the reasons that we offer this. It's not just for us to come on and be a bunch of talking heads, but also to foster
yeah.
community among our clients and also too within the industry. So I do want to tackle there are two questions in the Q&A. I'll probably take a stab at the first one and do a little plug. So AI, Rebecca asked, AI is a great solution. However, some industries are behind in companies and or departments, she's not going to name any names, but legal and executive, are not willing to budge whenever it comes to AI. How does HRTA attempt to advance, especially in the frontline hiring volume space? Okay. So I'm going to do a little plug. If you're not following us on iCIMS, please follow us on iCIMS. We've got a series that we call Fireside Chats. Lisa's going to be on one soon. We also are going to be releasing one, I want to say in the next couple of weeks, where we brought on our general counsel, Courtney Dutter, who is phenomenal. And she actually answers this question. And believe it or not, I'll give you the kind of the short version. The reason that legal says no is because a lot of times they don't understand the value, because a lot of times in TA, we don't really show the value of AI, or we haven't tested it. And also the other part of it, probably the stronger, is that the business is not pushing it. So she unpacks all of that. Stay tuned. Make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, because she answers all of that question and then some in under 20 minutes. So make sure that you catch that. All right. The next question was, does iCIMS offer any AI powered tools to help create interview guides?
Interview. So we do have an interview co-pilot that is in production right now. Boy, couldn't speak for that one in there. I do think that is one area. So actually interview management is an area we are looking at in terms of enhancing that. So there is a co-pilot in production today that you can tap into, and we can certainly make sure you have access to that information.
Awesome. And then Christine asks, I would like to see how Apply will integrate within iCIMS for recruiting workflow, which will help support and decrease time on recruiters. She said that they hire close to 2,000 frontline each year, and they utilize an RPO. So for those that don't know what an RPO is, it's a recruiting process outsourcing. So it's kind of like having a recruiting firm handle a lot of your frontline hiring. Uh, she states that she's actually considering bringing that in-house, and this may be a way to do that. Did either one of you want to tackle that question? She'd like to see how we're going to integrate with iCIMS. So maybe we can start with timeline, Lisa, and then we can talk through what that might actually look like.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, the initial integration is in flight right now, and so we'll be bringing that to life top of the year. We've got a number of customers who are in our sort of early adopter phase of that integration. And what that does, just to be clear, is it streamlines the data between the Apply system and the iCIMS ATS system. So candidates show up in both places when our customers are using the Apply, what we're calling Frontline AI solutions. So that's the starting point. There are a number of other simplifications we're going to be doing to put more tools in the hands of our customers to be able to manage changes to the candidate experience in terms of how that application flow works. There's the reporting that Vera mentioned. That's another area of emphasis in the early days. There's some enhancements to the interview process. The integration all the way through to offer is something we are also working on that will come in over the first part of 2026 as well. So there's a pretty comprehensive roadmap that gets us very quickly to a very robust set of capabilities across both systems. So I'm looking forward to maybe having the opportunity to talk more about that on a future webinar.
Absolutely.
Vera, anything you want to tag in on that?
Yeah, actually, we at Apply have some RPO clients. So we are happy to jump on and see how we can do a business case and see whether it makes sense for you to keep it outsourced or to bring it back in-house, and what that means in terms of time and cost savings.
Well, there's been a tremendous amount of activity in the chat. So we will, I believe we get the transcription for this. So if there were questions that weren't answered, I'll try to find the answers and then get them over to you. But we love that kind of engagement. Paige, I am actually going to kick it over to you, but just personally, I want to thank Lisa and Vera Love. I actually got to spend time with them both in person this week. So this is just, we're going to have to find a way to talk to each other tomorrow, because then we could be 5 days in a row.
That's right. I love it.
All right, Paige, I'll hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So thanks again, Trent, Lisa, and Vera, for walking us through these insights today. And thanks everyone on the line as well. So as a reminder, the recording will be sent out to everyone in an email, so keep an eye out for that. And then I also wanted to just kind of plug our upcoming event. So we're excited to announce that iCIMS Next, our biannual virtual event, We'll be back on Thursday, November 13th, and this will also be hosted by Trent. So this event's designed to give TA and HR leaders the vision, technology, and insights to become true agents of change and make AI a competitive advantage. So there's a QR code on your screen to register, and I'm also going to quickly link this in the chat as well. So I'll keep that up on the screen just for a second. And then next, if you're interested in more data, you can scan the QR code on your screen, and this will take you to download the full 2025 State of Frontline Hiring Report, where a lot of this data was taken from today. So I'll leave this up on the screen for a few moments, and I'm also going to put this in the chat as well, so you can download this too. And then lastly, if you have additional questions or if you'd like to discuss anything further, please reach out to your iCIMS or account manager, or you can contact sales@icims.com. So thanks again, everyone, for joining today, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.